Nigel is on important parliamentary duty, appearing in the Commons for votes as we speak. But we will hear from the man himself when he comes out of chamber. Our camera will be waiting for him just yards from the green chairs around about 7:30 p.m. Now, earlier on today, Nigel did make his maiden speech. Fair to say it was vintage Farage as he laid into the whole of the Commons, saying he was surrounded by more lovers of the European Union than when he was in the European Parliament. Let's hear a snippet of the 10-minute speech now.
What I perhaps didn't expect was to come here and to find that I'm more outnumbered with my reform team, more outnumbered here than we were in the European Parliament, because there are more supporters of Brexit in the European Parliament than I sense there are in this Parliament of 2024. This is very much a Remainers Parliament. I suspect in many cases it's really a rejoiners Parliament. But the other issue, and it's very interesting as we debate the King's speech, if you look at the speech itself, the word immigration is mentioned only twice, and asylum just once. And perhaps this is not a surprise, as when Sir Keir Starmer laid out the 6 big priorities for the general election for the Labour Party, he didn't mention legal or illegal immigration. And that's the other area in which I think the 5 of us sitting over here are going to find ourselves massively outnumbered in this House, is because we actually do want to talk about these issues. You see, I believe that the population explosion is having the biggest impact on the quality of life of ordinary folk than any other issue.
Well, the cat is amongst the pigeons, and earlier on today, Nigel Farage also called for a referendum. Of course he did, for our membership of the ECHR. Let's take a listen.
The financial rewards for smuggling people across the English Channel can now net a gang 2 to 3 million euros a week. Whatever prison sentences or penalties are put upon them, there will always be people volunteering to make millions of euros a week. We will only stop this if we start deporting people that come illegally. Then they won't pay the smugglers. But we'll only do that by leaving the ECHR. But I've got a fun suggestion that I think would liven up politics, engage the public, and see a massively increased turnout. Why don't we have a referendum on whether we continue to be members of the ECHR?
Got to say, absolutely textbook. First speech, maiden speech, Nigel Farage calling for a referendum. Now, to discuss that, I'm joined in the studio by Miriam Cates, a former Conservative MP, and Lord Maurice Gasman, former peer and academic.
I'm still a peer.
You're still a peer. We've established
I'm not
that.
A former peer.
You're not 80 and you're not hereditary, so you should be fine.
You're a peer. We've got that. Right, let's have a look at that speech. Let's start with you, Miriam Cates. He said a very funny line, I felt, about there are more Remainers. He said this is the Remainer Parliament. In fact, he said this is a rejoiner Parliament. Quite a few groans on that. And then talks about the population explosion is having a bigger impact on British people's quality of life than any single other issue. And of course, then he asked for a referendum on the ECHR. You've delivered many speeches in chamber. What was your opinion on Nigel's first stint at the crease?
Well, I think it was very confident, and I think you shouldn't underestimate how difficult it is actually to stand up in that chamber. It's a very historic place. People do get nervous. I know Nigel's very, very practiced at public speaking, but to speak without notes, confidently, humorously, I thought it was an excellent speech. Lots in there I agree with. I'm sure he's right about the Brexiteer rejoiner ratio. I'm not sure about his idea of fun. I'm not sure the British public think referendums are fun after the experience of the last 5 or 10 years. But I think he makes an excellent point about the ECHR, although I don't think we should be too simplistic about it. If we did leave the ECHR, we'd need some major reform of our domestic human rights legislation. Otherwise, we would be in a big pickle. And
Lord Gasman, it was very interesting. He talked about the magnitude of the asylum process, the immigration problem we have. He praised David Blunkett, former Labour Home Secretary, about how tough Labour used to be. But then he said, I don't expect this to happen. He said that won't happen under this Labour government. Why? Because of the ECHR. We will not stop the boats by attempting to stop criminal gangs simply because it's too lucrative a business. Do you think that's a fair point? This Labour Party won't have the bottle to tackle this in the same way David Blunkett did?
No, I don't think it's a fair point. So just to say, first of all, that I'm a resolute Brexiteer. I have many comrades in the Labour Party who support that. I think the government is this government is moving into the right spaces as regards taking advantage of the opportunities that Brexit opens up, particularly, and this is my big argument with Nigel Farage, is that I'm pro-Ukraine. He seems to be pro-Putin, and I just don't understand it. So I'm looking forward to having a discussion about that. And we've got Yvette Cooper.
I don't think he said he's pro-Putin.
Oh, he's always full of understanding. He's got a weakness for kind of authoritarian, tyrannical kind of foreign powers. He likes Trump as well. But the point is, he has made very public statements that are pro-Russia. I'm saying my party is very pro-Ukraine. And that's a huge difference between us. And David Blunkett is a very good friend of mine. He's a very strong ally on my wing of the party. He's being heard. I wouldn't say, I don't know, you're an MP from the same area. I mean, I wouldn't describe Yvette Cooper as a liberal exactly. She's quite pro-law and order. Don't jump to premature conclusions. Labour's said that it treats migration as a national security issue. Personally, I'm in favour. If it's a national security issue, we have to find military solutions. I'm in favour of boats in the English Channel, the Navy in the English Channel.
Well, that's actually to the right of Nigel.
Right, left, you've got to get over it. What we've got to do is protect our national sovereignty. Immigration is obviously a political issue. When it comes to the ECHR, that's just part of tidying up the loose ends of Brexit to get out of that. We've got to be a sovereign nation. I trust our Parliament to protect our liberties. I'm just saying the tone of this, Martin, is, if I may, I know your pro-EU tendencies, I would like to call you by your French name, is all of a sudden, we've been in power for 18 days and a whole hoo-ha over this. Watch how this goes.
Isn't the problem, though, Maurice, that whilst the people at the top might be sensible and they will hopefully be getting sensible advice, there's a whole load of backbenchers who are very ideological about this question, who want Rwanda ditched, not because it may or may not work, but just it doesn't fit with their ideology. And if those in power, if the cabinet do try to crack down on immigration, they'll actually find the main opposition from their own backbenchers.
Well, welcome to the Soviet Union. We've got an enormous majority.
Thank you, Comrade.
And what I see is actually a quite Leninist party leadership. They're very disciplined. You may have noticed in the election how extraordinarily... Did you hear a squeak about Brexit from Labour Party candidates? We support Brexit. Keir Starmer said it is unimaginable that we will rejoin in our lifetimes. So I think Nigel's going off half-cocked here. I think he's attacking a paper tiger. Labour is extremely disciplined, that we support Brexit, leaving the EU, that immigration is a national security issue. 18 days in, I wouldn't get too excited.
OK, let's move on, Miriam and Maurice.